Okay, Dave from Grain Growers Australia, the CEO, is with me today. We're going to be talking about the Australian agricultural industry. I guess the first question for you, Dave, is what are the nuances of the Australian broadacre ag industry?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. It's fantastic to be with you here today. Australia is a great place for cropping and a whole range of agricultural pursuits. But there are some nuances down here in Australia that are a little bit different to other parts of the world. One of the first things I'd say is Australian farmers have significant exposure to a couple of key risks. One of those is climatic. So if we think about down here in Australia, we do know over time what we do have is an increasingly variable climate. And Australian farmers are actually used to a lot of volatility and a big difference between year on year. So one year what we'll see is flooding rains, and the next year we might see in that same region a really dry season and drought conditions. So that climatic volatility is one of the first things I'd say. One of the second things that I'd cover off from an Australian context is also Australian farmers' exposure and experience in international markets. So Australian farmers generally right across the board are very focused on servicing international markets. So whether that be for Australian wheat into our key markets like Indonesia and Philippines, whether that be our barley, which traditionally went into a lot of international malt markets, now also goes into a range of feed markets, or some of our pulse products which go into a lot into the subcontinent, really into meet a lot of those diets of people through countries like India, like Pakistan and like Sri Lanka. So that market exposure, but what also comes with that is Australian farmers, unlike a lot of their international competitors, don't receive the same level of government subsidies or support. So Australian farmers really do have that exposure to the market, to the climate, and that makes them really resilient operators, allowing them to manage their business with full exposure to the market forces, helps ensure that they're really connected to the markets and operating really efficiently and profitably.
So would you say that's something that's very unique to Australia, is the lack of government subsidies, but also the lack of support from insurance as well? I mean, insurance, let's say in some, an American market or Canadian market, they may be able to get, crop insurance, a multi-peril, but the Australian farmer may struggle, especially with the excessive premiums.
That's absolutely right, Sarah. So in Australia, there's only a small number of farmers farming grain crops and broadacre crops in Australia. What we have is around 22,000 farmers, but out of those 22,000 farmers, they're producing this year, they'll be producing over 50 million metric tonnes of crops, so wheat, barley, canola and other crops. Now, due to being a small market in Australia and that lack of government support, we don't have a mature market, and we actually don't have an existing market for multi-peril crop insurance in Australia. So that really does mean that Australian farmers need to manage their businesses in a way they can manage their own risks, because they don't have that fallback and that support of some of those products.
Fantastic. Thanks, Dave.